Dear friend Bochelai, Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen, let me first thank Patricia Francis and the International Trade Center not only for organizing this event, but for organizing it here in Chongqing, a place whose growth, vibrant development under the strong leadership of Bochelai and his team have more and more to do every day with the opening of China to international trade. The World Trade Organization is the organization which its members have entrusted with the task of regulating multilaterally the openness of world trade. We all start from one principle, that is that trade is a transformational driver of economic growth and of poverty reduction. And in order for trade opening to work for the benefit of all, strong multilateral disciplines are needed, and this has been the very purpose of GATT and the WTO over the past 60 years. Negotiating, administering, enforcing these disciplines, these rules, in order to create a fair level playing field for our countries is WTO's core business. Transparency, predictability, stability are guiding objectives. Why? Simply because this is what entrepreneurs need to trade. Now, this system has been put to test during the recent economic crisis. And this stress test of ours, not only banks have stress tests, but international organizations have stress tests, has so far demonstrated the relevance and the resilience of our system. And as a matter of fact, thanks to these multilateral disciplines, expected protectionist pressures during this crisis have been, to that stage, contained. So the system works, and it has resulted in developing countries, and especially emerging countries, becoming the main engines of world growth today. And as Mr. Yi said a moment ago, contrary to what happened in the 1930s, when protectionism aggravated the crisis, resisting protectionism this time has mitigated the crisis. But of course, the rules of this multilateral trading system still need improvement, which is the purpose of the go-around. These rules have to be made more development-friendly, and the negotiation has gone roughly 80% of the way in doing so. No surprise in these conditions if developing countries are now the ones who are pushing the most for a rapid conclusion, an issue which I have discussed this week in Korea with President Lee, who, as you know, will be chairing the next G20 meeting in November, which I have also discussed with Vice President Xi Jinping and Minister Chen Deming in China. They all agree on the necessity to give the final political push so that what remains to be negotiated in order to find the right final balance is done in the coming times. But when we speak of increased market access and improved rules of trade, it's mainly those countries already engaged in trade who have the most to gain. But what about the others? The ones that only have a small share of world trade, the one that only trade in one or two products or commodities. And these others include many developing countries and most of the 49 least developed countries, the LDCs. And one point which has become increasingly clear is that market access alone does not equal market entry. A range of supply-side trade-related infrastructure constraints still prevent many developing countries from enjoying the benefits built in the multilateral trading system. And this is why in 2005, at the Hong Kong Ministerial Conference, we launched this Aid for Trade initiative in order to focus more of development assistance in enhancing developing countries' capacity to trade. On this, our progress since Hong Kong has been noteworthy. Since 2005, there has been a turnaround in development financing for trade. Flows have consistently increased year after year and reached $42 billion in 2008. And signs are positive that this commitment is being sustained despite the recently growing pressures on public finance among OECD countries. And new sources of funding are emerging, notably among South-South partners, and not surprisingly, in the front line, we find China. China is playing an increasing role in aid for trade. It's now become an important financial partner for developing countries, and I see it personally as a positive development that more than 100 developing countries in Asia, in the Pacific, in Latin America, in Africa, are now learning from the experience of China in terms of transformation and building the necessary expertise. So, aid for trade is for the moment moving forward nicely, but we need to sustain this, and in order to sustain this, we need to show more clearly impact, and which is why I have placed reporting on outcomes and impact of aid for trade as the central theme for the third global review of aid for trade, which will take place in Geneva next July. Getting aid for trade to work better also means ensuring that developing countries, and especially LDCs, express their demands for trade-related assistance, and that donors partner align their support with that demand. And for least developed countries, this is the very purpose of the integrated framework, which is actually a fully fledged aid for trade program specific to least developed countries. As you know, it's a joint effort by UNCTAD, the ITC, the World Bank, the IMF, UNDP, us in WTO. We've recently revamped the operations of the integrated framework, and I think we can say today that building more trade capacity, understanding how to do that, is much better integrated into development, into poverty reduction strategies, and for LDCs, this is often the first step towards identifying key constraints to overall competitiveness, see how they can insert themselves in these global supply chain, which Dr. Supachai was mentioning a moment ago. So the integrated framework helps least developed countries identify their trade bottlenecks, gets participating agencies to use their area of expertise to respond to these needs, and also helps driving donor support to fund the various projects identified. So far, 23 donors are supporting this mechanism, and 46 LDCs on the 49 existing LDCs are benefiting from it. So let me conclude, ladies and gentlemen, on insisting on how important the International Trade Center is for our endeavors in the World Trade Organization, whether in aid for trade or in the specific area of the integrated framework. The International Trade Center has become a major actor, a major lever in fostering developing countries' capacity to trade. As a parent of the ITC, together with UNCTAD, we have been increasing our financial support, our operational support to the work of the International Trade Center, and I want to thank wholeheartedly Patricia Francis for her leadership in responding vigorously to this drive. Streamlining ITC's operational capacities in export development, building the necessary toolkit for a better impact evaluation. Those are the two main strategic directions which WTO, as a parent and in agreement with UNCTAD, has given to the International Trade Center. Your work in the coming days will be a crucial input for the attainment of these two strategic goals, and I want to thank you in advance for your contribution.